On my birthday, in front of everyone, my son said he never loved me, he always hated me. That moment didn't just break me. It awakened something I didn't know I had. I vanished from his life. But not without a plan. What I did next, he never saw coming. Before continue, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That's free and only way to support us. Thank you. You ever have one of those days where you wake up feeling like everything is finally falling into place? That was me on my 65th birthday. I woke up to the smell of pancakes, the sound of laughter downstairs, and sunlight pouring through the curtains like life was giving me a warm hug. My wife, Marie, was running around with that chaotic joy she always brought to special occasions, yelling at the caterers one second, giggling with the grandkids the next. It was the kind of day you remember when your bones get older and your stories get longer. I looked in the mirror and gave myself a small smile. Wrinkles. Plenty. Grey hair. What was left of it? But somehow, I felt young again. Today wasn't about getting older. It was about being celebrated. Being loved. Being seen. The backyard was decorated like something out of a magazine. Fairy lights hung from the trees. Tables covered in blue and white cloths. Balloons that spelled out "Happy Birthday, Dad." I could hear the low hum of music playing, Frank Sinatra, my favorite. Everyone I cared about was there, old co-workers, church friends, my neighbor Ted with his bad jokes, and of course, my family. My wife, my son Ethan, his wife Jenna, and my 2 grandkids. And then came the moment that shattered it all. Ethan stood up. He grabbed the mic, smiling, poised, and raised his glass. I leaned in, ready to hear the words every father waits their whole life for. Something heartfelt. Something beautiful. But what came out of his mouth? It was a bullet in a birthday card. He said he never loved me. That he always hated me. That he had been pretending his entire life just to keep the family peace. That everything I ever did for him didn't matter. Because in his eyes, I was nothing more than a shadow he had to walk past every day. The backyard went dead silent. My jaw didn't drop. My heart didn't break instantly. No. It cracked, slow, steady, and deep, like ice under weight. The cake still sat untouched. The candles unlit. I just stood there, holding a plastic cup, trying to figure out if I was in some twisted dream or a cruel prank gone wrong. But no one laughed. Not even him. Some people gasped. Others looked down, pretending they hadn't heard it. Jenna grabbed the kids and muttered something about giving them air. My wife looked at me with tears forming in her eyes, like she wanted to fix it but didn't know where to start. And Ethan. He just sat back down like nothing happened. Like he'd just ordered dinner. No one said a word to me after that. Not even a happy birthday. I walked inside. Alone. I stared at the cake one last time, triple chocolate, just how I liked it. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I tossed it in the trash. You don't celebrate with people who spit in your face. That night, I sat in my recliner, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me. It kept spinning, and I kept thinking. Replaying every memory, every moment, trying to find the clue I missed. When did the love turn to hate? Was it a single argument? A series of bad parenting moments? Or was I just always destined to be the villain in his story? The worst part? I couldn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because the pain was too dry. Too raw. It didn't feel real yet. It felt like someone else's story. But it wasn't someone else's. It was mine. And in that silence, I made a quiet promise to myself. He gave me a gift I never asked for. Now it was time for me to return the favor. But not with yelling. Not with fists. With silence. With patience. And with the kind of revenge that doesn't just hurt. It haunts. The next morning didn't feel like a new day. It felt like leftovers from a meal no one wanted. The sun rose like it had no idea what had happened the night before. The house was too quiet, and the only sound was the ticking of that old wall clock I always meant to replace. It mocked me with every tick, like time was moving on while I was still frozen in that moment. I made coffee, though it tasted like nothing. My wife, Marie, didn't say a word. She walked around with eyes that looked like they were holding in 1,000 questions but no voice to ask them. She wanted to talk about it, I knew that, but I also knew she didn't want to make things worse. We both danced around it like it was a corpse in the living room we didn't know what to do with. I sat at the dining table, staring out the window, watching leaves fall. I couldn't stop replaying the words. Not just what he said, but how he said it. Calm. Clear. Like it wasn't some emotional slip, but a speech he'd been practicing for years. How long had he felt that way? Had every hug been fake? Every Father's Day card written with clenched teeth? I went upstairs and opened an old chest filled with memories, Ethan's baby shoes, drawings he made in kindergarten, trophies I used to brag about to my co-workers. I held them like they were evidence in a trial I didn't know I was on. And then came the pictures. Photo after photo of birthdays, vacations, soccer matches. Smiles that now felt suspicious. I kept asking myself, were they real? Or was I just a prop in his happy family performance? Marie came in and put her hand on my shoulder. She whispered that maybe Ethan didn't mean it. That maybe he was just overwhelmed. But that didn't explain the coldness in his eyes. This wasn't some emotional outburst. It was truth. And it cut deeper than anything I'd ever felt. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the porch with a blanket and the sound of crickets. The wind was chilly, but not as cold as the silence between me and my son. I thought about calling him. Thought about asking him why. Begging him to tell me what I did to deserve that. But no. That would make me look desperate. Weak. And I had been many things in life, tired, broken, even poor, but I was never weak. He had taken my birthday and turned it into a funeral. So I decided to bury something too. My expectations. My hopes. My illusions of a loving son. That night, under that dark sky, I wasn't mourning a son. I was awakening something I hadn't felt in decades, a fire. Not of rage, but of purpose. You see, when you're betrayed by someone you love, it doesn't just hurt, it reshapes you. Like fire to iron. And I knew right then, if my son wanted to treat me like an enemy, then he'd better learn how the old man plays the game. Not with noise. Not with fury. But with silence. With strategy. With patience. Because while he saw me as an aging, forgettable man who was just there for family functions, he forgot that I'm the same man who built everything he stands on. And I know exactly how to tear it all down. A week passed. Then 2. Then 4. And not once did my phone light up with his name. Not a single text, no half-baked apology, not even a "you okay, old man?" from the boy who used to hold my finger while learning to walk. It was like I'd vanished from his world. Like I was already dead to him. So, I made it easy. I vanished. I stopped going to family dinners. Skipped the grandkids' soccer games. Cancelled my appearance at church bake sales. I didn't want his wife or kids caught in the crossfire. I wasn't cruel, but I had to draw a line. If I meant nothing to him, then I would become exactly that. Nothing. But being invisible gives you an advantage. People stop watching you. Stop expecting you. And when no one's looking, that's when you can really start watching them. I became a ghost with a purpose. I didn't sit around crying into my soup. No, I got clever. I started observing Ethan's life like a hawk above a rabbit hole. Quiet, calculated, and with one goal: find the cracks he didn't know he had. Social media was easy. People love broadcasting their fake joy. I watched as he posted pictures of brunches, cocktails, blessed family moments. And every time I saw that smug grin, something in me itched to wipe it clean. But I needed more than pictures. I needed truths. So I called in a favor. Davey, ex-IT guy from the office, retired early after that data breach scandal. He owed me one, big time. Still had all his toys, VPNs, scrapers, anonymizers. Looked like a nerdy Bond villain with a keyboard instead of a gun. I told him I just wanted to know what my son was hiding. I didn't need to explain why. He understood the look in my eyes. 2 days later, I had everything. Let me tell you something. People wear masks not just on Halloween. Ethan, my sweet little angel with a degree in finance and a golden boy image, was drowning. Turns out, he'd racked up serious gambling debt, online poker, sports betting, crypto roulette. And he wasn't just losing money. He was borrowing from some unkind people. The kind who don't send reminders. Just broken windows and bruises. That was just the appetizer. He was also sleeping around. Jenna, his wife, had no clue. But there were text chains. Photos. Even hotel reservations booked under a fake name that matched his old video game alias. I sat there, reading every word, every message, every careless photo. The more I read, the more it made sense. Of course he hated me. Because I was the mirror he didn't want to look into. I was a man who did everything the hard way. Honest work, long hours, no shortcuts. And he was building a house of cards and blaming the wind for shaking it. But I didn't rush. Revenge isn't loud. It doesn't storm in and throw punches. No. Real revenge is like fog. It creeps in. Slowly. Quietly. And before you know it, you're lost in it. So I waited. I started slipping small things into place. Little whispers in the ears of old business contacts. A couple of anonymous tips to places I knew would follow the scent. Not enough to ruin him, yet. Just enough to tilt his perfect little world off balance. He didn't know I was watching. He didn't know I had become something more dangerous than an angry father. I had become the ghost in his machine. And I was just getting started. Something changed in me during those quiet weeks. It's strange. You think grief feels like crying, screaming, smashing things. But real grief, deep, guttural, chest-heavy grief, feels more like stillness. Like staring at a wall while the world buzzes around you. And that stillness? That's where I found my power. Ethan thought he was done with me. That his words at my birthday were the final stamp in our relationship's obituary. But what he didn't know is that I had just begun writing the prologue to his downfall. You see, you can't hurt a man who has nothing to lose. I had already lost my son. Not to death. Not to drugs. But to ego. And that kind of loss, it doesn't come with funerals or casseroles. It comes with silence and plotting. I started small. Old contacts. Old favors. People forget that before I was just a dad, I was someone. I'd worked my way up from janitor to floor manager at a manufacturing plant where I ran teams bigger than some armies. I knew people in finance, logistics, supply, HR, people Ethan now rubbed shoulders with, thinking they didn't know he was my son. Oh, but they did. I had lunch with Mr. Kessler, a stiff but reliable man who now ran the very firm Ethan worked with on the side for consulting deals. Over coffee, I casually mentioned some documents that had come into my possession. Nothing direct. Just a hint. A seed. The kind that grows into suspicion. The kind that blooms into an audit. Then there was Sarah from accounting. Sweet woman. Still sent me Christmas cards. I handed her a flash drive. Told her I found it on an old laptop. She didn't ask questions. She never did. Within a week, whispers began circling around Ethan's reputation. But I wasn't even close to done. Because Ethan still had his one safe space, his home. Jenna, his wife, bless her sweet clueless heart, still believed he was the good one. She pitied me. Thought I was just an old man losing his grip. I played the role well. Dropped off toys for the grandkids. Chatted about the weather. Showed up with soup when they were sick. And every time I entered that house, I observed. I noticed passwords. Phone habits. Locked drawers. I even saw him stash a burner phone under the cushion once when he thought no one noticed. He underestimated me. He always did. So one morning, while Jenna was out grocery shopping and Ethan at work, I offered to babysit. And while the kids were busy watching cartoons, I went hunting. Found the phone. Took screenshots of messages that would make a priest faint. Pictures. Locations. One woman even had the audacity to send him lingerie photos with a caption that read, "Can't wait till your boring wife's out again." I sent those to an anonymous email account. And I waited. That night, I sat in my recliner with a glass of whiskey. Ethan's birthday was coming up. Fitting, really. His turn to blow out candles. Make a wish. Start a new year. Instead, his wife found the photos. At midnight. She called me in tears. Asked if I knew. And for the first time in years, I lied with a clear conscience. I said no. Said I was shocked. Heartbroken. Said maybe it was a mistake. She didn't believe it. But she needed someone to cry to. So she cried to me. And just like that, I became the victim again. The forgotten father who'd been cast aside. And now wore the mask of comfort. All while holding the matches that would burn his world down. He'd taken my birthday from me. Now I had just taken his marriage. And I was only halfway through the list. You ever watch a tower of cards collapse? It doesn't go all at once. First, it wobbles. One corner lifts. Then a single card slips, and before you know it, the whole thing's in pieces. That was Ethan. After Jenna found the burner phone, things started unraveling faster than I expected. One night, I saw him leave the house with a duffel bag and a look that could kill. The garage door slammed so hard the windows rattled. Jenna didn't chase after him. She just stood there, arms crossed, eyes red, lips pressed so tight it looked painful. I didn't need to ask. I already knew. He'd been kicked out. And just like that, the golden boy with the perfect house, perfect wife, perfect kids, was crashing face first into reality. But here's the thing, he didn't fall silent. No. Ethan started to panic. I could feel it in the air. His social media suddenly went quiet. Then cryptic posts appeared, quotes about betrayal, loyalty, and trust. Classic signs of a man losing control and trying to blame the storm on everyone but himself. His boss called him in for a routine check-in. That was a lie. I knew because I made sure of it. Remember that flash drive I gave Sarah? Well, turns out it had more than just photos. A few spreadsheets, some suspicious numbers tied to expense accounts. You'd be surprised how easy it is to make an employee look like he's been cooking the books when he's already neck-deep in shady transactions. I didn't plant fake evidence. I just highlighted what was already there. Ethan had been skimming off contracts, using ghost vendors to funnel funds into side ventures. He probably thought he was smart. Invisible. Untouchable. But people don't realize how visible they are until the lights get flipped on. And I was the one flipping the switch. He called me that night. I didn't answer. He texted. Said he needed to talk. That something was going on and things were getting out of hand. I stared at that message for a good 10 minutes. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Then I locked the screen and went back to watching Jeopardy. The next day, his company suspended him. Pending investigation. That same night, the family group chat, one I was always silent in, exploded. Cousins, aunts, distant relatives who usually only surfaced around funerals or weddings, were suddenly asking, "Is Ethan okay? What's going on with him and Jenna? Did you hear what happened at his firm?" I didn't reply to any of them. I just sat there, sipping my lukewarm tea, watching the world do my work for me. The most satisfying part? No one suspected me. To them, I was just the quiet old man who got humiliated by his son. The one everyone felt sorry for. The one who shouldn't have had to go through that. But behind those pitiful glances, I was pulling strings like a puppeteer at a family circus. And Ethan. He was the clown who didn't know the act was over. His credit card got declined at a restaurant. Word got out he was sleeping in a motel. Jenna blocked him. The grandkids stopped asking about him. His friends faded into shadows. All it took was a little push. A few well-placed truths. And the patience of a man who had once been forgotten. I watched his world fold in on itself. Slowly. Painfully. Exactly how mine had. The day he said he never loved me. There's something powerful about control. Not the loud, bossy kind people throw around in meetings. I'm talking about silent control, the kind where no one knows your hands on the lever, but the whole machine turns when you want it to. That's what I had now. And yet, I wasn't satisfied. Because there was still one thing Ethan had, something I had spent a lifetime building. My legacy. You see, I wasn't a millionaire, but I was no fool with money either. I'd worked 40 years in the same company, climbed up from the factory floor to regional operations. Never missed a mortgage payment. Never took a vacation I couldn't afford. I built something, modest, but solid. A lake house. Retirement fund. Stocks I never touched. A safety deposit box with some gold coins and family heirlooms. And every last bit of it was in Ethan's name. He was my only child. Who else would I leave it to? But that was before the birthday. Before the speech. Before I realized the man I raised wasn't my son anymore, but a stranger wearing his skin. So I made a new plan. One morning, I drove downtown. Walked into my lawyer's office. The same guy who handled my will when Marie and I bought our first home. He greeted me with that fake cheerful tone lawyers use when they smell paperwork. I sat down across from him, took a breath, and slid a sealed envelope across the table. "I want everything changed," I said. "Everything." "Everything." He blinked. "Are you sure you?" I've never been more sure of anything in my life. And I meant it. We redrew the will from scratch. Ethan's name was erased like chalk on a rainy sidewalk. Instead, I set up a foundation. Not just any random charity. I named it after my mother, Edna Ray. She was the only one who ever made me feel truly seen growing up. The foundation's purpose? Helping abandoned parents. Elderly people thrown away like junk mail. Fathers and mothers kicked out, ignored, humiliated by their children. People like me. It felt poetic, in a twisted kind of way. Then came the fun part. I wrote Ethan a letter. Not an angry one. Not even emotional. Just cold, clean, surgical. I told him the will had changed. That his name was no longer tied to a single penny I'd earned. That the man he never loved had decided to die with that truth. I didn't mail it right away. I held on to it for a week. Let the paper soak in the weight of finality. Then one morning, while he was still staying at a budget motel on the edge of town, I dropped it off at the front desk. He never called. He didn't storm over. Didn't beg. Didn't scream. But I knew he read it. Because 2 days later, his social media accounts vanished. His phone stopped ringing. The world around him, already cracked, finally shattered. And me. I bought myself a new recliner. Put it by the window in the lake house. Every morning I'd sit there with my coffee, watching the mist rise off the water, and think about how justice doesn't always wear a badge or carry a gavel. Sometimes, it just wears a sweater, sips coffee, and rewrites a will. Small towns don't need newspapers. Gossip travels faster than fiber optic cables. And once the story about Ethan's downfall started to unravel, people didn't even bother whispering anymore. They spoke openly, at grocery stores, in barbershops, during Sunday services, like it was breaking news. But the headline always stayed the same. How did a guy like him mess up so badly? It didn't take long before I started hearing the murmurs too. Every place I went, someone had a new theory. A new tidbit. A new shocked expression about the Golden Boy's fall from grace. They all pretended they didn't see me smile. Truth is, I didn't even need to say a word. That was the beauty of it. The same people who once looked at me as just Ethan's dad now looked at me like some tragic figure, someone wronged, betrayed, and discarded. A man with dignity who was chewed up and spat out by his own blood. And I let them believe every bit of it. I didn't deny anything. Didn't confirm anything either. I just stood there, nodding slowly, with that tired smile people wear when they've survived a war no one else saw. But deep down, I was relishing it. Don't get me wrong, I didn't want fame. I didn't want pity. But I wanted him to feel what I felt. That cold, hollow feeling of walking into a room and realizing the entire world sees you differently now. And he did. I saw it in the way he walked, head low, shoulders hunched, that fast shuffle like he wanted to become invisible. He couldn't even look me in the eye at the local market. I stood 2 aisles over, watching him panic over a bag of frozen peas. He used to walk around this town like he owned it. Now, he couldn't even walk without someone whispering behind him. His friends were gone. Those slick suit buddies? They disappeared the moment the spotlight turned sour. His poker pals? They found a new table. And Jenna? She'd filed for divorce. Quick and clean. It was like watching a magician get exposed. Once the illusion broke, people only saw the man behind the curtain, a tired fraud trying to tape his life back together with denial. The funny thing, people started treating me like I was some wise old sage. The kind of man who'd lived through storms and come out cleaner. They'd ask me for advice, bring me pies, offer to mow my lawn. One guy even told me I should run for city council. And I played the role well. The quiet, humble man. The dignified father who still loves his son despite everything. Oh, the irony. Every time someone said they were so sorry about what Ethan did, I'd pat their shoulder and say, we all have our battles. But inside, I was pouring another drink and toasting to poetic justice. Still, even with the town turning its back on him, even with everything I had already taken, it didn't feel complete yet. Because revenge, true, soul-satisfying revenge, it doesn't come from outside shame. It comes from inside reflection. And I wanted him to look in the mirror and realize something he'd never said out loud before. That I wasn't just his father. I was the architect of his empire. And now, I was the storm that brought it to the ground. They say the worst kind of pain isn't anger, it's regret. And sooner or later, regret shows up. Doesn't knock. Doesn't call. It just walks into your life like it owns the place and starts rearranging the furniture. That's what finally happened to Ethan. It began with a letter. No envelope. Just folded notebook paper left at my doorstep one rainy morning. I almost didn't notice it. The ink was smudged, the handwriting sloppy, unlike the perfect penmanship he used on those Father's Day cards when he was younger. It wasn't a rant. Not even a proper apology. Just lines, broken, messy, scattered. The kind of writing you only do when your thoughts are too heavy to carry. He said he missed me. That he was sorry. That he didn't mean what he said on my birthday. That it came from a place of bitterness. That he was angry at himself, not me. That he felt like a failure and didn't know how to handle it. That everything he said that day was him lashing out at the only person who ever expected better from him. But the part that got me, he wrote that he understood why I changed the will. And that he didn't blame me. That was the moment it hit me. He wasn't fighting anymore. He had surrendered. But here's the twist, regret doesn't reverse damage. It doesn't unburn bridges or unmelt candles. The things he shattered couldn't be glued back together with words on paper. I didn't reply. I read the letter twice, folded it, and placed it inside a showbox where I kept other odd things, an old watch, a faded photo of my first car, the hospital bracelet from when he was born. Then I went fishing. Literally. I packed up, drove out to the lake, sat on the dock, and cast a line. Just me and the quiet. That day, I caught nothing. But I also didn't need to. Because I already had something more valuable. Peace. It wasn't joy. Not exactly. It wasn't triumph either. It was just peace. A quiet understanding that I'd done what I needed to do. And that he'd finally realized what he lost. You know, all my life I waited for Ethan to see me, not as a provider, not as a background character in his movie, but as a man. A real, flawed, loving man who made mistakes, yes, but who always showed up. And now that he finally saw it, it was too late. I know that sounds cruel. But time is crueler. You can't rewind birthdays. You can't hear insults. You can't re-celebrate the days someone stole from you. Ethan wanted to rebuild. But some houses are meant to stay in ruins. As a reminder. Not out of spite. But out of truth. Sometimes, when you love someone so much, the only way to truly protect yourself is to keep them at a distance. That letter didn't change everything. But it proved something. That I'd won. Not in the petty, gloating way. But in the kind of way that makes you breathe easier at night. Knowing you didn't go crazy. Knowing you weren't the villain. Knowing the truth always floats back up, like a bottle in the ocean. And he was finally reading the message inside. My next birthday rolled around, and this time, there were no guests. No balloons. No cake shaped like a golf ball or a fishing boat. No family dinner with burnt lasagna and grandkids spilling soda on the carpet. Nothing. And you know what? I preferred it that way. I woke up early, made myself a proper breakfast, eggs just the way I like them, runny yolks and all. Played some old records, cracked open a bottle of wine I had been saving for something special. Well, I figured surviving emotional warfare and reclaiming my dignity counted as something special. The house was quiet. Peaceful. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for a phone call. Or a surprise visit. Or some last-minute apology with gift-wrapped guilt. I didn't need it anymore. Ethan didn't call. No letter. No text. Just silence. Maybe he was too ashamed. Maybe he thought I'd slam the phone down if I heard his voice. Or maybe he finally realized that silence was my answer. And that was the real gift. Peace. You spend so many years as a parent worrying. Did I do enough? Did I mess them up? Did I love them right? And then one day, you realize some things. They were never in your control. Some people choose pain. Some choose pride. And some, like my son, choose to spit in the face of the very person who carried them through storms. So, on my birthday, I made a choice too. I drove out to the lake house. Just me and a little apple pie from the corner bakery. No candles, no singing. I took it out to the deck, where the sun was setting low and golden, and I sat in my favorite chair. I didn't make a wish this year. I didn't need one. Because everything I'd hoped for had already happened. I'd lived to see the day when truth triumphed over lies. When patience outlasted cruelty. When a forgotten father became his own man again. As I took a bite of that pie, I thought about all the birthdays I'd spent trying to be the perfect dad. Giving, forgiving, explaining, over-explaining. Walking on eggshells just to keep the peace. All while raising someone who, ironically, couldn't even say thank you without gritting his teeth. But not this year. This year, I celebrated me. My story. My journey. And the sweet, dark revenge that didn't need fireworks or fists, just time, strategy, and silence. I went to bed early that night. No noise, no chaos. And I slept better than I had in years. Because sometimes the greatest gift isn't what someone gives you. It's what you take back after they've tried to take everything. People love a redemption story. They want a neat ending. Father and son hugging in the rain. Tears, forgiveness, maybe a church choir humming in the background. That's what movies teach you. But this wasn't a movie. This was real life. And in real life, sometimes the ending isn't about reunion. It's about resolution. I didn't get back the years I lost. I didn't get a son reborn with humility and grace. What I got was clarity. And at this age, clarity is more precious than gold. I didn't hate Ethan. No. That would have been too easy. Hate gives someone space in your heart. What I felt was emptiness. A hollow space where a father's pride used to live. But that space? It gave me room to rebuild. I started volunteering at a local centre. Helping seniors who had been kicked out, forgotten, mistreated by their own blood. Turns out, I wasn't alone. There were dozens of us. Men and women with stories that echoed mine. Some sadder, some angrier. But all of us with that same look in our eyes, the look of someone who gave everything. And got silence in return. We shared stories. Laughed at the absurdity of it all. Supported each other. And slowly, the bitterness began to lift like fog over water. One day, I got a visit. It was Jenna. She stood at my front door, kids in tow, holding a bag of homemade cookies. She looked tired. Older. But not broken. We didn't say much. Just a nod. A soft smile. The kind of silent understanding that doesn't need words. She said the kids still asked about me. That they missed Grandpa's stories. And that Ethan. Well, he wasn't around much these days. I invited them in. For the first time in years, the house felt warm again. The kids ran through the hallway like they used to. I pulled out the old board games. Jenna helped me fix the leaky faucet that had been mocking me for months. It wasn't a full circle moment. But it was a new one. Later that night, as I sat by the fire, I took out the showbox, the one with Ethan's letter. I read it again. Slowly. Every word soaked in regret. In pain. In a kind of honesty he never could say out loud. And I smiled. Not because I forgave him. Not because I still wanted him in my life. But because I finally understood. He was a broken man trying to look strong. And I was a strong man who had finally stopped breaking for others. I didn't need an apology tour. I didn't need closure in the way people write it in books. I had my life back. My dignity. My peace. A man who stood up when everyone expected him to sit down. And pain into power. And I had my name. Not as Ethan's dad. Not as some retired old man with a tragic story. But as myself. A man who turned betrayal into purpose. So if you ask me now, would I do it all over again? The answer is yes. Because in losing a son who never loved me, I found the man I had forgotten I was. And he will live the rest of his life remembering that you don't humiliate a father in front of the world. And walk away untouched. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That's free and only way to support us. Thank you.